In the car world, there's yet another shortage coming up, and I'm not talking about semiconductor chips or food shortages. This shortage is in addition to that, and it's a lot more critical than you think. Today, I'll tell you about the impending electric vehicle battery shortage. The media has been trying hard to get people to adopt EVs because of ecological benefits. Well, I've been telling you for years you shouldn't get an EV, at least not for now. But today, I'll also tell you about the newest problems with EVs that not many people know about, at least not yet. Most people know that by 2035 you won't be able to purchase a new combustion engine car here in the US. One major reason for this ban is to break free from dependency on foreign oil imports. Think countries like Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Canada. But if you think the US will become less dependent, oddly enough, this shift to EVs will just make us even more dependent. But this time, we'll be ever more dependent on China. Here's the thing. China is the top EV battery producer in the world. The country makes 558 gigawatt hours of EV battery capacity annually. Put that into perspective. A gigawatt hour is 1 million kilowatt hours. The battery of a Tesla Model 3 standard range has an estimated total capacity of 50 kilowatt hours. This amount of battery capacity China is producing could supply almost 11.2 million Tesla Model 3s. That might sound like a lot, so you're probably wondering why there's a battery shortage. We'll get into that later. But for now, look, we're talking a massive 79% of the world's total. China dominates other parts of the battery supply chain too, like when it comes to mining and refining battery minerals like lithium and graphite. If you're wondering where the US falls in place, we're the second largest EV battery producer in the world. We make 44 gigawatt hours. We might be number 2, but 44 gigawatt hours is nowhere near China's 558 gigawatt hours. The US only makes about 6.2% of the world total. The majority of this total is thanks to the Tesla Panasonic Gigafactory in Nevada. This factory is outputting a whopping 37 gigawatt hours of annual capacity. That makes it the single largest battery factory in the entire world. Next up is Hungary, which makes up 28 gigawatt hours or 4% of the world's total. Then it's Poland at 3% and South Korea at 2.5%. But this list of countries is in for a big shift. In 2025, it's all going to change. And the reason for this has to do with recent investments to build battery factories here in the US. Recently, automakers have been investing billions in EV battery factories. Hyundai is spending $5.5 billion on a battery and EV plant in Georgia. Operations are expected to open during the first half of 2025. This new factory will have an annual production capacity of 300,000 vehicles, and the factory will create around 8,100 new jobs. Ford is building a new plant in Kentucky. GM is partnering with the appliance maker LG to develop a battery factory in Michigan. Even Stellantis and Samsung are building a $2.5 billion facility in Indiana. Stellantis projects that this new assembly plant will create around 1,400 new jobs. But here's the question. Why are these companies doing this? Well, here's the thing. Chances are at least one crucial component in your EV came from China. At this point, the majority of EV battery cells are made in China. But automakers want that to change. They don't want to remain dependent on China for these parts. Even President Biden is putting over $3 billion into the EV battery supply chain. But now, let's talk about the 5 largest EV battery makers in the world. These 5 companies are frontline contributors, critical to the growth of the industry. Interestingly enough, all these companies are based in the same continent. If you guessed Asia, you'd be right. The number 1 largest EV battery maker in the world is Contemporary Amperex Technology Company Limited, also known as CATL. CATL is a Chinese technology and battery manufacturing company that was founded in 2011. They specialize in manufacturing EV lithium-ion batteries and energy storage solutions. They also specialize in battery management systems. Last year, their installed capacity reached 96.7 gigawatt hours. That was an increase of 167% from the year prior. This one company makes more EV batteries than the US, Poland, Hungary combined. CATL supplies batteries to major EV automakers like Volkswagen and even Tesla. They've also taken major steps in the development of sodium-ion cells technology. And they're also set to take the lead in producing the cheaper alternative to NMC batteries. The second largest EV battery manufacturer in the world is LG Energy Solutions, or LGES for short. LGES makes up 20% of the global EV battery market, and they have an impressive installed capacity of 60 gigawatt hours. And LGES has some big future plans on the horizon. The company plans to invest a total of $2.6 billion with GM to build their third joint battery plant right here in the U.S. Together with this plant, they plan to secure an annual capacity of about 50 gigawatt hours. That would be enough energy to power around 700,000 EVs. Taking the number 3 spot is Panasonic. Panasonic is a major Japanese multinational conglomerate company, and their headquarters are in Kadoma, Osaka. They have an installed capacity of 36.1 gigawatt hours. Their lithium batteries are known for being both efficient and environmentally friendly. Did you know that Panasonic is the sole maker of the advanced Tesla battery? And as soon as 2023, Panasonic also plans to produce a new lithium-ion battery for Tesla. Besides Tesla batteries, Panasonic also supplies battery cells for full electric vehicles, hybrid, and plug-in hybrid lines. And the company plans to invest $705 million towards production facilities in Japan. The fourth largest EV battery maker in the world is BYD. BYD is actually an acronym for Build Your Dreams. Did you know that BYD officially launched the revolutionary Blade battery pack in 2020? This battery uses LFP technology. That means this battery doesn't use cobalt or nickel. It's less prone to overheating. It has a longer shelf life, and it's cheaper than most lithium-ion cells to build. And the fifth largest EV battery maker in the world is SK On. Not related to SK as in Scotty Kilmer. This company is a spin-off at the beginning of October, and it's the battery division of SK Innovation based in South Korea. Their batteries are known for performance and safety, and they're competitively priced. Did you know that SK was one of the first to market ternary lithium batteries? It's a type of lithium-ion battery that uses nickel, cobalt, and manganese or aluminum as cathode material rather than lithium cobalt acid we typically see in a lithium-ion battery. But now, let's jump back into the largest EV battery manufacturing company in the world, Cattle. Well, they've held the number 1 spot for 5 years in a row. I know what you're thinking. What have they done so special to earn them that spot? Well, you see, Chinese companies have been able to secure large amounts of raw materials needed for battery, and Cattle has been particularly successful in this area. And they have major supporters in the Chinese government as well. In the past, whenever Cattle ran into a problem, the Chinese government was more than happy to dole out the needed funds. Chinese policy banks even provided over $100 million to Cattle for some projects. Did you know that Robin Zhang, the founder and chairman of Cattle, is one of the wealthiest men in Asia? He's worth well over $60 billion. Within just a year of setting up Cattle, Zhang had already started a subsidiary in Western China. And guess what it was? Large, dried out salt beds with thick underground brine full of lithium. Despite all this, there's a huge problem in the EV industry. Believe it or not, there's an impending battery shortage. And that problem won't just affect a few specific countries. It'll affect the global industry as a whole. Recently, R.J. Scaringe, the CEO of Rivian, sent out a warning to the EV industry. He warned that the EV industry could be in for a dire shortage of materials needed to make batteries. And with the ongoing semiconductor chip shortage, an EV battery shortage is the last thing automakers need. Scaringe said that the current semiconductor chip shortage is only a small appetizer to what we are about to feel on battery cells over the next 2 decades. Right now, the total global battery cell production combined represents well under 10% of what we'll need in 10 years. That means that 90 to 95% of the supply chain that we'll need doesn't actually exist, and that's a serious problem. But Rivian is preparing themselves now in the calm before the massive storm. The company is currently targeting multiple suppliers, and they plan to invest in building batteries in-house in the near term. Unfortunately, that's not just it. There's more. Lower availability of raw materials needed to produce EVs means that EV production costs will soar. In fact, the cost of EV production is primed to surge to new highs over the next 4 years. Some have even described this price surge as a coming tsunami that the battery industry is not ready for. This surge in battery costs may even drive up the price of EVs sold in 2026 by an additional $1,500 to $3,000 per EV car. Did you know that in 2020, Elon Musk was urging the mining industry to increase their nickel extraction? He even added that Tesla would offer a giant contract for a long period of time if these companies mine nickel efficiently and in an environmentally sensitive way. Carlos Tavares, the CEO of Stellantis, has also warned about this upcoming shortage. He expects a shortage of EV batteries to arrive 2024 or 2025. And by 2027 to 2028, he expects the lack of raw materials for EVs to really slow their availability and adoption. EVs are being adopted faster than ever right now. But according to Tavares, this adoption speed is so high that the supply chain and the production capacities have no time to adjust. Governments around the world are pushing for combustion engine bans by 2030 or 2035. The Biden administration even announced a target that half of all vehicles in the U.S. should be EVs by the end of the decade. But according to Tavares, this is all going too fast. Interestingly enough, Tavares also warned that the shift to electric production could create geopolitical risks. This is because countries may need to start depending on minerals mined in countries that are seen as strategic rivals. He added that not everyone may like the way that these materials are going to be sourced in the next few years. Meanwhile, the price of lithium has risen almost 900% in the last 18 months already. Because of this, many assumed that the capital markets would begin establishing dozens of new lithium mining projects, but that has not been the case. Instead, there have only been a few investments, and most of them originate from China for the Chinese supply chain only. Speaking of China, there's a major Chinese EV manufacturing company considering a factory in the US, and that company is called NIO. Right now, cars from China are subject to a 25% import duty. So, this new US factory would create a way to avoid some or even all of these import tariffs. Now, technically, NIO has yet to confirm or deny the reports. This is all just based on reports from the media. But here's one thing that started the speculations in the first place. NIO is currently hiring for manufacturing and planning specialists, body process specialists, infrastructure specialists, and logistic project managers. Sounds like your average manufacturing job advertisement. Well, get this. All of these positions are overseas. Every single one. Just take a look at the overseas planning specialist position. Candidates for this position also need to be familiar with U.S. state policies, design codes, and planning submission processes. And they need to be familiar with U.S. master plan principles and process planning. If they're not planning to have a plant in the U.S., what else could it possibly be? NIO coming to the U.S. would put pressure on American automakers, especially if they offer cheaper vehicles. Really, the key will be the price. That's how Japanese brands got started here in the U.S. decades ago, and South Korean cars followed that same business model. A more competitive price for an EV would meet the needs of American consumers, though. But now you tell me, after hearing all this, are you ready to switch to an EV? Please share your thoughts by commenting below. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your support.